Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Okay. So if at any point in time to take you on a class this evening on storytelling in creative media and script writing, from story foundations to script drafts. I believe you know that storytelling cuts across different facets of media. It's not just about making films. You have the radio art, you have the radio drama, you have the impact films for NGOs, you have the documentaries, even the regular skits that you do for you to sit down in your room and say, I want to become a content creator on social media, video content creator. You need to script whatever you're going to present to people before you come online. So storytelling is embedded in everything that we do. But for this class, we'll be talking about the creative media and script writing. So um, every story starts on paper, true. But before every story starts on paper, you also have to think, a story comes to your mind first and you say, oh, I like this story. I want to bring it to life. And then you translate it on paper. So for every film that you've watched, every, content out there that you've seen, like I said, it started as a story. Even the skits that you see, no matter how, silly, funny it is, it started on paper. Someone, the idea came to someone and the person put it on paper and it made it become life. So every story you see starts on paper, and I want you to start thinking in that direction. It's not just about, oh, I have a story and it's in your head. As long as you've not been able to move it from your head to paper, it's just still a concept in your head. So every story starts on paper. So storytelling. Why does storytelling come first? Now, like I said, every good equipment can make a story look better, but no equipment can save a bad story. We all have ideas, we all have things, we all have stories that we want to tell, we all have these concepts that we want to capture, you know, and sometimes we watch some films and we say, this story is this film is not giving. And when you decide to, figure out what is wrong with the story. Sometimes you find out it's from the storytelling itself, that is the script, the storytelling. And sometimes you can say, okay, it comes from the production side, that is the camera work, the sound and all that. But if there's anything I know, is that regardless of how bad an equipment is, a story can always shine through. I mean, when you think of some of the cult classics that we have from Hollywood, when you go back to watch them, you would laugh at the camera, or you laugh at the cinematography, you will laugh at so many things. But you realize that what stands out is the storytelling, how the storytelling, was able to grab you. That's the legacy of that film, the story itself. So no matter how long it's been, no matter how far, no matter how much technology changes, no matter how much you are getting advanced in this thing, it's the story that makes you remember that film. And I need you to remember it. The storytelling is the foundation of every content that you see out there. It's the heart and soul of it, And when you now go to script writing is now the execution. That is when you now that's a script writing, that storytelling. You can sit down and tell someone a story. But the minute you decide, I am going to put this on a paper to write it, that has turned to script writing. But like I pointed out, storytelling comes first. Before you put it on paper, you have thought through a lot of things and decided this is a story worth telling. And this is a story worth my time on paper. Storytelling in creative media. Now, storytelling is one of the oldest, just one of the oldest forms of expression out there. You think of just think of the first human to walk on earth and their observation of life, their experiences. And then if we're going with the biblical, if we're going with the biblical, that's the Christian version, just think of Adam and Eve. Adam came first, he interacted with nature, and then when Eve comes, he will have to tell her, you see, this animal, stay away from it. This one friendly, this one not so friendly. This one this one that one. That is your art. That is storytelling. Now he has been able to relay a message, to relay the universe, to relay the experiences that he has observed to the next person. Now, from the tales, when we think back to the tales that we've learned as kids, the folk tales, the oral epics, yes, our ancestors, not all of us anyway, some ancestors did not, traditional ancestors did not write down stories, but they were able to pass on stories orally. They were able to share experiences. They were able to teach. They were able to inform, educate, and inspire through some of these stories. And some comes from their observation of their environment. And then they figure out we are going to use this to teach these people. We're going to point them in this direction. And the best way to do it is through this storytelling. So it's one of the oldest forms of expression that has existed. And it still exists until this day. Now we've been able to translate it from, the oral part to the print, that's the writing, and the writing, we've been able to animate it from the animation. Now we've been able to now have live action where we tell the stories. Now, what is storytelling? It's the art of sharing experiences, ideas, and emotions through a structured narrative. It's how humans have passed down knowledge, culture, and values for thousands of years. And in creative media, storytelling transforms ordinary moments into meaningful experiences that connect with audiences on a deep emotional level. I need you to think of it this way. So, we all have stories. As a human, we all have stories. If we sit down, when you think of the concept of the human library, when you think of the concept of the human library, I don't know if you know that New York human library where they go on the street and tell people to come and tell their stories. Some people, we all have stories, but some people think their stories are not worth telling. Some people think, oh, I have a story worth telling. And you realize that some of the people who think that they have stories worth telling, I mean, the stories they are telling, you would know a group of you would know a number of people who have gone through what they have gone through. But the way they're able to sit down and structure the story, the way they're able to carry you through it is what differentiates them between from others. Everyone is a storyteller, but there are people that when they tell stories, you're willing to listen. I remember that in secondary school, we would have I went to a boarding school, and anytime we come back from a long holidays and we sit down, there is someone, everyone watched a movie that period, but we had this person who would sit down and give you frame by frame storytelling of films. And every time in her corner, we would sort of surround her and tell her to tell us a film that she watched. It felt like she was such a good storyteller that I felt like watching a story through her. You've not seen it, but you're watching it through her. So there are people who are actually gifted in structuring storytelling. And to be honest, it's also a craft. It's something that you can learn. Some people, yes, gifted, but it's also a craft that you can learn on how to structure it in a way that people connect to it and feel what you want them to feel. So you have the structured communication where you organize the ideas, emotions, and messages in a way that the audience can feel and follow. Then you have the emotional connection that people can, what do you want people to feel from this story? You want them to feel fear. You want them to feel nostalgia. You want them to feel hope. You want them to just be, entertained and just forget their worries. Then are you also trying to influence them? Are you trying to shape their behavior? Are you trying to, stay in their mind for a long time? When you think of the content created for children, I mean, content created for children, even in the rhymes and all that. Some of these things, you watch cartoons, early childhood cartoons. These things are designed to shape behavior, to create a thought pattern and to influence how they act, how they, relate to one another and even the environment. So that's what storytelling does. And for this, there are 5 elements in a story. Now, remember, we're not talking about a script. We're talking about a story now. You have the character, you have the setting, you have the plot, you have the conflict, and you have the resolution. Now, I'll explain better. So, character. A character is basically who the story is about. Now, in this example here, we have Chidi, a young mechanic in Nnewi chasing a dream. Proper, awesome, Now, there are also times when we have characters that are not humans. You can have a city as a character. I mean, if I'm going to write a film about a city where once you enter that city, you can't leave. You can't leave because there's something about the city itself swallows you. It's the character. The character in that story is the city, and everything is going to revolve around that character, that the city. If I'm going to do about a dog, if I'm going to do a character about a dog, everything is going to revolve around that dog. So you create characters, and I just need you to know it's not just about humans. There are many things around you that can be characters. I remember a film that it was a Pandora box. I think a Pandora box that was the character in that film. It was just placed on a table, and anyone who interacts with that thing gets changed. So think of that. So I need you to just understand that it's not just about human, but who is this story? Who is this story about? Who is it about? Sometimes human, sometimes not human, but it's the story that every other thing revolves around. Then the setting, where and when. It could be anywhere. It could be on earth. It could be in hell. It could be in heaven. It could be out of space. Well, anywhere where that story is taking place is the where and when. And in storytelling, you could have multiple, settings. As long as those settings are central to the story, they're central to the characters that you have come up with. Then plots. The plot is the sequence of events that drives the story forward. So for you to move from point A to point B in a story, it's the plotting. You're figuring out, um, for me to, maybe I need to go and give someone something. Now, the plot is I have to go from here to that place. Now, how am I going to get to that place? The sequence of events that helps me get to that place. Perhaps I'm in my house, leave the house. I'm going to drop a meal for my child in school. And in between that, I have a sequence of a series of events that happen. Maybe a car hits me, or maybe I hit a car, or maybe I run into the MOT, or I run into, and my day is sort of derailed. So those are sort of the sequence of events that help drive the story forward, because everything that is preventing me from my goal is to go and see my child. But there are a series of events that are trying to prevent me from achieving that, which is going to see my child. So, but those things are the plots that helps drive the story to know, okay, will she make it? Will she not make it? Then you have the conflicts. And just like I explained, um you have the conflict, which is the problem and which is the engine of like every great drama. You cannot have a story without a conflict. You can't have a story without a conflict. There has to be a reason why that story exists. What's happening? What's the conflict here? Now, remember me saying I need to go and get my child. Now, the conflict there is my inability, that I'm going to face things that are trying to prevent me from seeing my child. Now I run into an issue that's preventing me from seeing my child. And now you're watching it, trying to understand, okay, will this thing stop her from seeing her child? Will she surmount it? Will she beat it? Will she eventually see her child? So the conflict is really the engine of every story. For every story you're telling, you say, what's the conflict? What is the central conflict in the story? What is that thing that this character wants to achieve, and what is that thing that is going to stop the person? It could be an internal thing, it could be an external thing, but we're going to talk about that later. The resolution is how it ends. Now, I've talked about me going to see my child. If I eventually see my child, now what you're going to take home there is she has seen that child, and the way it unraveled, the resolution, the way it unraveled, what stakes, what were the stakes in place between me seeing, leaving my house and going to see my child, and now me eventually seeing my child? How does that end? What's the resolution? Me seeing my child, yes, that's the resolution, but how does it end? And what will the audience take home? Is it that I will do anything to see my child, or is it that I'm someone who, when push comes to shove, i I give myself reasons for not going to see my child? So that's the thing there. Then we're for the types of, we have different types of stories in media, and we have the fiction. If you read Things Fall Apart, if you read Eze Goes to School, all these books, these are fictions, and most of Nollywood movies, feature movies, and web series that you watch, they're all fictions. They're stories that you invent. They're stories that you make up. You make up. Not that these stories do not exist in a way, but you find a way to make up the story. Find a way to invent a character, invent an event, and then create a story around it. Then you have nonfiction. This is real events, real people. Think about the news when you turn on the TV to watch news. Real people, real events. 50,000 was donated here. 10,000 people died here. This happened. These are real people that things are happening to. And then you also have the biographical films, where people think of, I want to make a film about myself, about my life, and I'm alive now. I make a film about myself. So I make an autobiographical film about myself. And I'm going to capture a lot of people in my background. I'm going to talk to my friends. I'm going to talk to my family. I'm going to talk to, people around me. So we're capturing real events, and they're talking about real things that have happened in my life. And, because they are real, it's not fiction. And they also have investigative content where you go, you hear something happened somewhere, and you take your camera to that place and go to ask, so what happened and how did it happen? So these are real people, real events. And then you have the documentaries, which explores local reality. Now, documentaries are an interesting bit because you can have a fiction and non-fiction in there, but mostly it's non-fiction because it's reality. Where the fiction part comes in is where you're trying to reenact something. For example, let's say we want to do want to do, let's say, a documentary on the history of coal in Enugu. Let me use Enugu for example, the history of coal in Enugu. And to drive it home, now we are going to explore real places. We are going to go to places like Eva Valley, Coal Camp, all these places that have these real things. We are going to look for the miners, people who worked in those mines, and ask them to tell us their stories. Now, to drive it to an audience, for them to sort of feel in tune with the story, to feel the pulse of the story, we can now get actors and tell them, oh, act like a miner, you act like this, act like that, and then we now create a different storyline, but it's in line with the reality that is going on, so that when you're watching it, the story sort of settles on you. If you watch something like let's say ID channel, History Channel, where they do a lot of documentaries, they in fact, they love using the fiction part to drive the non-fiction part, because it sort of enhances the story and makes people connect easily. It's like putting a face to the character, because there are also documentaries where you want to shoot real people, real realities, and the real people say, I do not want to come on camera. I do not want to be captured. Now, how do you go about that? Their story is real. The reality is real. But how do you go about that? At this point, you have to find stand-ins, people who are now going to sort of reenact. And that's where the fiction comes in documentary. Then you have the promotional brand stories. That's the adverts that we see here, the branded content. You know, um, you put on TV and they're selling margarine to you, they're selling rice to you, they're selling MTN to you. People are dancing. These parts, these ones, usually, it's content that is created for that fiction, basically. They can fictionalize it, but sometimes they also use real life stories to sell, because people love testimonies. So if you're going to be selling a brand and I want people to buy something, the best way to convince you is to get someone who has bought it and say, how is this product? Now, so that's why we have these things, we have this different element, these types of stories in different forms under the documentary and promotion and the brand stories. But I need you to understand that it can be mixed. It can be mixed, fiction and non-fiction, but there are also different forms of stories that are pure. For example, feature-length films tend to be, purely fiction. And in parts where it's not fiction, it tells you it's based on a real life story. But at the end of the day, they are reenacting it with characters, and we can now say that is fiction. So visual storytelling versus spoken storytelling. Visual storytelling, show, don't tell. In visual storytelling, think of a stage. I'll use a stage drama that everyone knows. Now you think of, let's say we have a character who fell into a stream, during Hamatan. Clearly, you can see the haze of Hamatan. Like, the character falls into a stream, and the person comes out, and the character next to the person is saying, "Are you cold?" And he or she says yes, but he or she walked out of the water, not shivering. And they ask, "Are you cold?" And he says yes. It doesn't show. Now, telling you that she's cold is not enough. That character needs to shiver. In fact, the person needs to shiver. And when someone asks, "Are you cold?" Even you watching it, to be like, duh, can't you see the person shivering? Now, what has happened here is that we've applied the show, don't tell. You have that shivering, that character shivering is the show. You are not telling it. Now, when the person now asks, are you cold? That's where you now have that spoken storytelling. You now have the narration there to reinforce the visual that is being seen. So visual storytelling is showing but not telling. You think when you think of old films, what's his name, Chaplin films. When you think of how film that is story that is Hollywood started, the film industry started. It started with silent films. Dialogue is actually a pretty new thing when you think about it. It started with silent films because they had not mastered the art of audio, connecting audio to the video. So it started with silent films. And when you go and watch silent films, it's like you're just thinking of how these people are able to say so much without you hearing a word. So much is said, no word is spoken. But for every action, for everything that is done, you understand exactly what is being said to you. So when you think of silent films, that's just it. It's visual, not storytelling. But now we've been able to merge it with sound. And just because we've been able to merge it with sound doesn't mean we should drown our audience with dialogue. Think of it even in reality, in our real life. It's not everything that needs to be said. Someone can look at your face and knows this person is angry. Someone looks at you and say, "Are you cold?" Someone looks at you and say, "Why are you so excited?" You've not said anything. So you need to learn how to merge these two formats to produce one wholesome content. Okay, let me go back. Spoken storytelling, basically, like I said, dialogue, narration, the oral tradition we have, where people just tell stories, and they're able to use words to convey a lot of things. In African cinema, you have more of the proverbs, where people use proverbs to say so much without saying much. You have the call and response, you have the griots, all these things, they all feed into like the spoken storytelling on screen. However, like I said, you need to master the art of these two things to produce a wholesome content, because if you don't do it proper, then you are going to have a film that people will find very tedious to watch. Now, when you think of a story, really, sometimes when we think of a story, we're not thinking of an audience. Let's be honest. When a story comes to you, the first thing you're thinking of is just how to flesh out the story. You're not thinking of the audience. But if that story is going to be presented somewhere, if you're going to be sharing that story somewhere, that's where the audience part of it comes in. You have a story and you're like, if I tell my mom this story, she's going to give me a slap because it's not the kind of story she'll like. Or if I tell my friend this story, he will like it, she'll like it. Or if I tell certain people this story, they'll think it's inappropriate. You get? So you always, once that concept comes to you, the next thing is, who is this story for? Because it's going to shape a lot of things. It's going to shape a lot of things in the storytelling. Every story must have a purpose. It must have a message. If it doesn't have a message, then no one can actually spend more than 15 minutes on it, because you haven't been able to pass. You haven't told them why they should watch your film. People watch a film for a reason. There's something that grips them. The moment they listen to your story, or the moment they even read your story. Let's use reading your story. Let's say you pass on a story to someone. There is always that thing that grips them. They're like, okay, I want to hear more. That's why you have what we call the log line in films, which is basically like a blurb of a book. Think of a book. You go to buy a book. You've not read this book before. You turn the back and you read the blurb, and you know whether you should waste your time on this book or not. That's basically how it is. So in storytelling, you have to figure out who is this story for, and what is the central message this story has to carry. What's the purpose of this story? Why should people want to sit down and watch or listen to this story? Then we have the local and cultural storytelling. So different kinds of storytelling. When you the way let's use the example. The way we tell our stories in Nigeria or even Africa is different from the way Hollywood tells their stories. It's different from the way in Asia their stories are told. Most stories are rooted in environments. It's rooted in culture. It's rooted in experiences of a locality. There's a reason why certain films feel off when you watch them. A Nigerian film, you watch it and you're like, this film feels off because it does not reflect the reality of a Nigerian. Sometimes it's the language. Now, we have the language in storytelling. We have the English, we have the Igbo, we have the Yoruba, we have the Hausa, we have the Pidgin. And everyone is important. If you watch an Igbo film, watch a Yoruba film, watch an Hausa film, and watch a film basically made in Pidgin. Now, the stories are going to be uniform. The stories are like when you look at it, you think this is a personal experience, an experience that you understand. But there is something about it being told in a language that you understand. You can watch a Yoruba film, and if you understand Yoruba, if you're not a Yoruba person but you understand Yoruba, you would enjoy it because sort of you understand the nuances and context of the language. Same thing applies to others because all these things carry context, they carry subtext, they carry a lot of things. And these things are central to how a story is being told. Think of our tortoise stories, think of the parables, just think of our folklores. And when you hear them in the local language versus when you hear them in English, they are really not the same. Really, they are not the same. The story structure starts to differ because even the words, the proverbs used sort of carry a different weight from when it's translated into English. So these things have a way of making a story either gel or not gel. And then you think of the local settings, you have the markets, you have estates, you have the slums, you have the villages, you have the cities. All these things they're like pieces of things that you pick to tell a story. So you want to tell a story and you say, this story is best told in English, or is best told in Igbo, or is best told in Hausa or Yoruba or Pidgin, or a mixture of all, or you can even do a whole blend. Or is best told if everyone comes as they are. There is the whole Wazobia working in this story. You say, okay, so what are the elements of these things I'm going to bring into this story? What are the things? What are the kind of proverbs? What are the kind of words? What are the kind of riddles that I'm going to use to help explain these plots better or to help advance the stories better? Then what kind of local settings would help advance the stories? If you say a story was shot, you're telling a story and you say, oh, this story is a 1960s story. And then I'm watching it and I'm looking and I'm seeing a G-Wagon. I'll be confused. In fact, I've actually watched a Nollywood film. I keep forgetting. It was an epic setting. Like, this set in let's say the 1700s, 1800s. And the film was going so well until the camera guy sort of panned between the forest. There was a forest and there was a gap in that you could, the forest wasn't so thick enough to cover certain things. But from the gap in the forest, you could see the main road and you could see cars passing. And it spoiled the whole enjoyment of that film for me. I mean, why am I seeing cars at the periphery of a setting, which you've told me this is a 1700 setting, is a local village? Bicycles have not even been brought into that community, and I can now see cars. And it wasn't something that was I had to zoom in to see. It was so clear. So when you're telling a story, you have to decide. There's a reason why I would say, even in Nigeria here, there are certain stories that are a bit hard for us to tell because of the setting. Being able to rework the setting to match it becomes very problematic. Thankfully, we now have people who are building sets to match timelines, to match eras, to match time periods, so that it's easy to tell a story. Think of Kula Afolayan and what he's doing. He shoots now a lot of epic films, and he creates these local villages in the middle of nowhere, so that when you're shooting, when you're watching it, you feel immersed in the society, because it's been created to fit the story that is being told. So now I think we've ended this session, but we have activities which you have to do, practical activities, and we have three. One, you are going to write a 5-sentence story in any local setting. Any local setting, a 5-sentence story. Remember, 5 sentences. Okay, the strike. So, okay, so on the comment, if I do it on the comment section, do it there. Write a 5-sentence story. Remember, 5-sentence story. Then, if you've watched a Nollywood movie, you can. Okay, all right. So just on your own, you can do the other two. But for this class, please do practical activity number 1, where you write a 5-sentence story, putting it in a local setting. All right. So I'm going to be taking a look at it too. Let me see. So I'm checking out what you've written now, and oh, sorry. Yeah, this is okay. So I'm still trying to check out who has written anything. Nobody. Why? Oh, the question. Okay, so I said for the activity for this class, you should write a 5-sentence story in the comment section. You can set it in any local setting. I'll be taking a look at what you're writing. So write a 5-sentence story in the comment section. I'll be looking at it and be reading it out. 5 sentences. Don't overlabel yourself. 5 sentences. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I have one now. Interesting. I don't know this person, but your phone, he said, press iPhone at the dusty bus park. Drivers shouted for passengers while hawkers weaved between buses. In the nearby school compound, children recited their lessons under the hot sun. By evening, they returned to their family compound in the village where grandma cooked over firewood. Neighbors gathered to talk about day's hustle, and laughter filled the air. When the night came, the whole compound slept under the quiet hum of crickets. Okay, interesting. Mbu Anthony Chinonso, your setting is a school compound. The midday sun beat down on the dusty assembly ground, making the orange peels from the recess look like glowing coals. Chidi crept towards the principal's office, clutching a crumpled note he hoped would change his final grade. Okay, the suspense is building. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door creaked open, and the stern face of Mr. Okoro appeared, peering over his spectacles. Gang, gang, gang. Chidi froze as his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. I missed it. Well, boy, come in. Just well, boy. Well, boy. Mr. Okoro barked. Are you going to stand there all day or show me what's in your hand? I love the suspense in this. Let us know what was in his hand, please. We have the next one. Uh-huh. Sorry, I'm trying to read. Okay. We have Chiamaka Blessing. In the quiet village of Ubokodo, I hope I got it right. The rooster crowed before the first light touched the red earth. Mama Nkechi balanced a basket of fresh pepper and bitter leaf on her head as she hurried to the morning market. The scent of roasted corn and firewood smoke filled the air, while the children chased one another around. Okay, I need more. It's interesting. Suddenly, a loud cry rose from the square when a missing goat was found chewing the chief's cassava leaves. By sunset, laughter replaced anger, and the village gathered under the moonlight to share stories and palm wine. Okay. In the quiet village of Abanike in Enugu, the morning sun rose gently against the dusty road. Mama Chika arranged fresh vegetables in her wooden stall while children in neat uniforms hurried to school. The smell of akara frying by the roadside filled the air, drawing workers on their way to the bus stop. An old radio playing high life music as neighbors greeted one another. An old radio played high life music as neighbors greeted one another in Igbo. By evening, the village square came alive with laughter, proving that simple places can hold richer stories. People are laughing this evening. Everybody's coming alive with laughter. I hope you're not doing this with AI. This one, everybody's coming alive with laughter. Oh. I have Mohammed Adamu. At dawn, the smell of akara drifted through the streets as the first keke rattled past the compound gate. Sorry. Mama Chinyere swept dusty ground while greeting neighbors who argued softly about fuel prices. By noon, the sun pressed hard on zinc roofs, and children chased a worn football packed between packed cars. A sudden rain sent everyone laughing for cover, turning red dust into slippery mud. When night fell and the generator hummed alive, the street settled into stories, shared bread, and quiet hope. Okay, we have from Home PC. I can see you, Home PC. Adamma Oluchionoha. Okay. I can also see from Victor Ogrejo 4. I can see your story. It was evening at Rumokuta Town Hall. Jennifer looked at her purse, confused as to what her next move would be. She could neither go forward nor backward. She looked seemingly mad. Okay. I can see Harvest Global 358. During the days of King Jaja, there was a lot of trading going on. Jaja was the wealthiest and wisest of traders known across the locality. People seek Jaja out for his wisdom and his insight. Okay, so I've read so I can see the stories, I can see what you're writing, and I'm glad you're engaging. I'm glad you're engaging. So to be fair, the story says a 5 sentence story, um, which I expect to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I expect the series to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They have a beginning and a beginning, middle, and an end. And some of you, yes, you've basically created part one, and you're asking us to come back for the sequel, which is okay. But I need us to think of stories in terms of beginning, middle, and an end. Even a 5 sentence story. There's this I think there is this group on, I think on Twitter, they call them the 3 sentence story. Actually, you have to tell a complete story in 3 sentences. And to be honest, if you can't capture your story in 3 sentences, it's going to be quite hard getting someone to read your story. Do you know why? I talked about the log line. The log line is more like the blurb of it. You know, when you buy a book and you turn the back and you read that, that's a blurb that sort of gives you the summary of the story. And that's what a log line does. It captures a story in a few sentences, but enough to make someone want to know the rest. So I know we've not gotten to that part, but I want you to think of a story as something you want someone to read and ask, can we elaborate on this? Can we draw it out more? I need more of this character. I need more from this character. I need more from this setting. I need more from this story. So I need us to think of it that way. So please keep it coming. Keep your stories coming. I've given you now the expo, beginning, middle, and an end. Yes, I'm seeing more. I'm seeing Godwin's Sewano. I can see Paula. Okay. Paulina Ezekiel. Okay. You said you're just confused. You just joined today. I think reach out to the admin and you can sort that out. I can see. Sorry, I'm seeing a lot of people's stories. So if I don't call your name, please don't take it personal. It's not because I don't like your story. No, 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 no. I'm just glancing down and just taking it in, please. Yeah, Helen Boma, I can see your story. Maritala Yusuf, I can see, yeah. Keep it coming. Onwusi Onyedikachi. Zoom user, I would advise that you change to your name so that at least we can identify you. Okay. And we have other activities there which you can engage in your personal time, because I promise you, the more you go through these activities, these exercises, the more you can get better at it. When you're watching a film, the second activity says identify story elements in a film clip. Now we've talked about the elements of a story, and what I expect from you now is that when you're watching the next film, you're identifying, okay, this is the character, this is the main character, this is the supporting character, this is the setting. You know, this is because for every film, there's always a central setting, there's always a central character, and there's, you know, the plot. So you're watching it and you say, oh, this is the plot of this film, and this is the conflict. You identify the conflicts of the film, and then the resolution. This helps you in, you know, building story structure when you want to tell your own story. And the other one, sorry. So please, in your free time, do activity 2 and 3. And if you have any, you can always share it. I think you have an active assignment place, logbook. You can always do. Okay, okay, all right. So I think let's move to the next one. To the next. Thank. Watch out for part 2. Indeed. So let's move to the next to the second part of this class before we call it a day. So, oh, don't worry, don't worry. All right. To share the screen. I'm going to be sharing my screen now so that we'll get to the second part of this class. Hold on. Okay, so everyone, we're going to the second part of this class. For the exercises, please keep it coming, and in your free time, please write more stories. In fact, the better you get at writing short sentence stories, the better you get at being able to flesh it, because it helps you gather your thoughts. It helps you know the purpose of the story. Really, when you want to tell, when you say write a three sentence or 5 sentence story, it helps you figure out what do I want to talk about? What's this story about? And helps you figure out the purpose of that story. And that is exactly what sells to people. Sorry. So fundamentals of script writing. Now we've now gotten into script writing. We've left storytelling and it's now script writing. So, like I explained, storytelling, everyone can tell a story. We all have that concept in our head where, we have, oh, this story. Let me tell this story. But script writing is now the execution part of the storytelling. This is where we now know who are the experts in storytelling, who have taken it one more step from just being a griot, that is an oral storyteller, to a script writer, a screenplay writer. Now, storytelling is the soul. It's the thing that is that idea that comes, that concept that comes up. But script writing is the evidence. It's now the evidence of your art. Is the evidence of your expertise. Is the evidence of what you can do. It is what you can now show someone. Remember, I said you can tell a story. Let's say, we talk about making pitches. You can meet, let's say, Kule Afalaya and tell him, oh, sir, I have a story. And he said, okay, in 3 sentences, let me hear it. And you tell him the story. He says, okay, that's nice. Sounds good. Now send me a draft script. Now, the moment you send that draft script, it doesn't matter how interesting the first story you told him in the elevator sounded. If that script isn't written well, isn't formatted well, it's going to the bin, because it's a waste of time trying to read through a story that is not formatted well. In fact, it takes away the joy from the story if it's not written well. It just takes it away. Think of any badly written book you've read. Just think of any badly written book you've read. Someone had an idea and then decided to put pen to paper and then published a book that nobody can read. You go online and people are bashing the book. And think of what it does to the reputation of the writer, of the author. So you can always have a story in your head and you tell someone and say, that sounds nice. Until you put it on paper and someone says, oh, this would translate well on screen. My dear, you haven't written anything yet. So a script is that thing that turns a story into a production plan. It's what's going to guide the actors, the directors, the crew. In fact, if it does not interest the director, forget it. Because it's a director that will pick your story. You can take your script to a production company. The first thing they'll look at is okay, let's pass this to a director. No, if he or she will be interested. And the director looks at it, and if it's not written well, he can fling it. So it's that story, is that written document that actually moves your story from concept to execution on screen. So what is the script? It's a formatted document that tells the production team everything they need to bring a story to life. What happens, who says what, who says who, and where each scene happens. So it captures three things: the characters, the conflicts, the setting. These three things. Now, if you come and so if you go back to what we talked about, local and cultural storytelling. If you have a story, because now we're dealing with the African context, the Nigerian context. You have a story now, and that story, maybe you don't even go far. You think of the film Interstellar, supposedly shot in space, right? Now, we all know it wasn't shot in space. A set was created, CGI was deployed. Now, you have that kind of story. It's interesting, very interesting. You carry that story and you tell someone, the person says, you tell the first person, the person says, oh yeah, this sounds great, sounds nice, I love it. Let's see the first draft. And you now put it on you now put it on paper, and give it to someone. Let's say it's past your director. The director looks at this story and says, this story is nice, though. But as this person was writing this thing, did they not think that there's no way this set is a high budget set and we cannot recreate it? It's a factor that, so what I'm telling you is that when you're writing a story, when you're writing a script, there are factors that go into whether your script is selected. Which I say, always go back to that local cultural storytelling. Because you can have the best storytelling and you can tell the best stories, but the moment you put it on scripts and it translates to what is impossible to shoot. First of all, it's not formatted well. Let's start from there. Let's say that's another problem on its own. Because once a script is not formatted well, no one is going to even look at you. Because you're giving the director double work. And by the way, if they are going to be paying you for as a scriptwriter, what are they going to pay you for? If they are going to finally take that script and give to a scriptwriter to format it, what are they now paying you for? For a concept? What they're paying you for is basically that you have a story, you've been able to put it on paper, format it well, and the story gels with the audience that you want it to go to. That's what you're being paid for. That's what you're being paid for. So a script is a formatted document that tells the production team everything they need to bring a story to life. What happens, who said what, and where each scene takes place. Then what is a screenplay? It is that one written for television and film. That's film and television. It's the one behind all the YouTube skits, the DSTV series, all these things, they are different. So you can say I'm a script writer. A script writer could mean that you write for stage, you write for radio, you write for you write impact shots, you write for adverts, you write for what's it called, a whole lot range of things for skits. But a screenplay is where you say I'm a screenplay writer. It means you write for films and television. Now, remember, if someone can ask you, are you a scriptwriter? You say yes. But you can also clarify and say, I write for every medium, or these are the mediums I write for. Because sometimes here you tell someone I'm a script writer, but to be fair, in Nigeria, when you say I'm a script writer, everybody thinks, their mind goes immediately to film, to TV. But if you are in an international audience where you say script writer, they ask you which media are you an expert in? And that's where you now get to say radio and all these things. But screenplay is a different thing. Sometimes you see, I'll tell you, sometimes you're watching a film and you see the credits running, story by, screenplay by different people. So you can have a story. There's this thing where people have stories, but they are not screenplay writers. They can't translate it on paper. They find someone and say, write this story for me, and they pay you as a screenplay writer. Then there's people who can tell stories and also can write for screenplay. In fact, I always advise everyone, script writing is a very good skill to have. But it doesn't mean that you must be a storyteller. It doesn't mean that you must be a storyteller. But to every good intent and purpose, please, you should learn storytelling because it will help you translate stories. If I call you and say, I want to give you a contract to write a script for me for a film, if you don't understand the structures of storytelling, if you don't understand there's act one, there's act two, there's act three, if you don't even understand there are different types of acts in storytelling, it will be hard for you to translate it better on a script. So these are the differences, but just know that a script is basically what guides a character, what guides a cast, what guides a crew on a set. It doesn't matter whether it's a film set, a stage play set, a radio drama set. It's what they look at. If a script is sent to an actor, it's what the actor looks at it and decides whether he's going to add that film or not. Now, from the infographics, we can see the story versus plot versus scripts. Now, the story is what happens. What happens? Emeka loses his dad. The plot is how that story unfolds. You know, Emeka loses his father's land. So how did Emeka lose his father's land? You know, this, that. Then the script is where now gives us the full information on how Emeka lost that land and how we can show it better. If it's on a stage, the formatted script will tell us what kind of setting that we're going to use. It's going to inform us on what kind of costumes will be worn. It's going to tell us if Emeka is going to even speak English or Igbo or Hausa or Yoruba, if he's going to mix everything. Is that script that is going to tell is that script that will inform the camera? Is that script that will inform the sound guy? Is that script that will inform the costume? Is that script that will inform the sets? It will inform the props. It's your script that will inform all these things. You can tell someone a story and you don't need to be detailed about, and in that room, before he killed his father, there was a knife. You don't need to, when telling that story, you can say he just killed his father. But when you're now translating into a script, that's where we now need to know interior. He enters the room. On your right, you can see a plate of half-eaten rice with cutleries. The cutleries have a fork knife, and a spoon, and an additional knife, kitchen knife. Now, these are the details that comes into the script. Remember, when you're telling someone the story, you're not going to, waste your time fleshing this thing out. But in the script is where you're going to capture these things, piece, detail, piece, detail, piece, detail. It is what the director, what the production manager is going to look at and say, this story is feasible on screen. This story is better on stage. This story is better translated to drama. Is that script that will help them decide which medium it's most suited for. Like I said, we have different kinds of scripts. You have the ones you do for the feature-length film. That is the one we know for cinema streaming. We have the one we have for TV web series. We have for skits, short form, that the skits, the Instagram comedy things you see. We have those. We have scripts for documentaries that we call treatments. Then we have scripts for adverts, the commercials that you see. We have for radio drama. We have for stage play. And these ones there are general formatting. There's a general formatting technique, but there are also formatting techniques that are specific to each kind of script. So what are the elements of a script? What are the elements of a script? We talked about script being the final execution of a story, what people see on paper and say, and say, yes, this story is feasible to be shot on a screen. It's a carefully structured document that has specific elements that inform the universal language of filmmaking. In fact, most times when you see a script, you tend to know if that person is, when some people say, oh, I'm a filmmaker, but a filmmaker doesn't necessarily mean that the person carries a camera. It doesn't mean that the person is a cinematographer. It doesn't necessarily mean the person is a gaffer or a props designer. When you say, I can confidently tell people I'm a filmmaker because I've spent time on sets. I can write a script and someone who is a cinematographer can pick it and understand what I've written out of shots, in shots, all those things. They already know because I know the language of filmmaking. I've been on set, I've spent time with cinematographers, I've spent time with the director. So I know the language of filmmaking and I can easily translate it on a script. That's usually what differentiates many screenplay writers and script writers, honestly. That's experience on set. Once you have that experience on set, I promise you, your formatting, your writing is different from every other person. Your script informs the language of filmmaking. It's what everyone looks at and know you're a professional. When you say, I'm a filmmaker, and they say what aspect, and you say script writer, screenplay writer, they know, yes, this person has spent time in the film industry and on set and understand the language of filmmaking. If I say, give me a wide shot, if a director say, give me a wide shot, you as a script writer, can you even translate it on paper to say, do you even know what a wide shot means? And even as a script writer, you can write and say, I want this as a wide shot, And then the director, you cannot argue whether it's going to be or not. But the fact that you've written it shows that you know directly what you want the story to be, how you want the story to be captured. Is the formatting, that film language and the formatting that differentiates you from every other person that says, oh, I'm a scriptwriter, I'm a screenplay writer. If you get two scripts, you know who has spent more time on sets and who has not. And to be fair, most times directors will rather pick that one that has been formatted, like they look at the script and they know, oh, this person is a filmmaker, this person has spent time, this person understands the language of film. Because it's easy, no one wants stress. You don't want to get a script and you start calling 1 million people. I beg, I define who will help me. You get one script where I get to. The thing itself, the story is sweet, but I beg, find me person will go help me break it down. Think of it as an extra cost to that producer. It's an extra cost already. And if they don't have that budget, they will keep it and go and look for the one that helps them, the one they don't have to spend extra money on. So the script structure, we are going to be using that, looking at the 3 acts framework here. And this covers basically every kind of script that you want to tell, any story, every kind of script. So the 3 act framework, remember when you were doing exercise, I said a story should have a beginning, middle, and an end. A beginning, middle, and an end. And that's what the 3 act framework is about. It's widely used, is the simplest way to organize your scripts into what people can easily understand. If you're going to give me 90 scenes, I should know where your act 1 stops. I should know where your act 2 starts. I should know where your act 3 ends. It divides your script into the setup, the confrontation, that is the conflict, and the resolution. it helps you know when you're overwriting. If I use the word overwriting, because sometimes you are writing a story and you just they write, they go, just they write, you're just writing. At some point, you're like, at what point am I going to arrive at the conflict? Is this three act that helps keep you in check when you're writing? You know, this is the beginning of this story. The beginning is when I want to write. They say you want to write a story about that. Oh, they have an example here. Ngozi and let's say Ngozi is looking for husband in Port Harcourt. Now we have to divide it into three: the beginning, the middle, and the ending. The beginning is telling us Ngozi is looking for a husband. In the beginning, it's meant to establish Ngozi looking for a husband. The middle is now, why can't she find a husband? What is actually the issue with Ngozi not finding that husband? Is it because she's not fine? Does she need to go and do plastic surgery to make herself more fine? Is it that her character is bad? She has to do an overhaul of character. Is she that she's living in a city where she's not appreciated? What does she have to do to get out of this conflict and arrive at the resolution? Now, the resolution usually can come with a confrontation where we now get to see what prevented Ngozi can now unravel. If maybe she met a man and the man says, "Oh, I don't want to marry you because we live in different cities," that's the conflict. The conflict is that they live in different cities and the man doesn't want to do long distance. And finally, they resolve it where, after much push and back and forth, they now resolve it that one person will have to give up their work to move to the other person's city. Or they decide, let's make this thing work as it is. That's the resolution. That's the resolution that we've arrived at. So when you think of a story in beginning, middle, and end, it helps you tell a story that is not superfluous. That is a story that is not just running, in my house, we call it, I could use the word but that is that you're telling a story that is just so unbelievable at this point. Like, it helps you structure the story, beginning, middle, and end. You arrive easily at parts that people can understand. Okay, this part has ended. We've arrived at a conflict. We've now arrived at a resolution. You want people to watch a film and heave a sigh of relief at your story. That is a film, a stage play. They heave a sigh of relief because it has, you've moved from introduction to conflicts to confrontation and that / resolution. And they know, okay, this story has ended and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way it resolved. Now, plot development is we've talked about plot. It's the sequence of events that helps the story arrive at the final point. Now, plots, think of it, the beginning, you develop different plots until you arrived at the conflict. From the conflict, you develop different plots until you arrive at the resolution / final confrontation / resolution. Is this plot development that helps the story move from one point to the other. It's what builds momentum. It's what builds the suspense. It's what builds the emotions in the audience that is watching it, because you are building a story. They go from oh, I like this character, to Jesus, why is this thing happening to this character, to oh, thank God this character is in a good place now. It's the plot that helps build this thing. So it's a process of building and advancing your story through a series of connected events that creates rising tension, conflict, and momentum towards the climax of the story. The climax typically happens at the end of the story. That is the confrontation part. That's where the climax of the story usually happens. And we have different kinds. A story can be linear and non-linear. So when we say linear, it means you want to tell a story of, let's say you want to tell a story of a young man who suffered in life before, becoming a big man. And you decide to start his story from when he was a young boy. It's a linear story. You now started from when he was a young boy. As a young boy, he was born into a family that they were struggling. even to go to school was hard. He had to get a scholarship. So you're building it brick by brick by brick by brick until you arrive at a place which is now where he has now arrived. Now, the non-linear storytelling is a story that can happen, you can start anywhere. It's not linear. That's linear, straight, non-linear. You started at a point and you're now maybe moving backwards. It could be a flashback thing. It could be a story where you started in the middle. You start, let's say you start the story with a young man trying to get a contract, and then he's trying to get a contract, and then from that story you now get to realize that this contract is his make or break. If he doesn't get this contract, his life is over. He has gotten to this point where this contract is what is going to prevent him from living the life that he envisioned for himself. Now, from that story, you can now walk your way backwards and now tell us, oh, for him to arrive at this place, this man has even suffered. And you now take us back to his childhood. And now from his childhood, you now walk us back to the present and now into the future. So Nollywood films also have this thing where they do the linear and non-linear, where they can take you forward, they can start linear, and sometimes they can start linear and sometimes still take you backwards. So they deviate and take you, with flashback sequences. But please, I usually say don't go with that type of, because sometimes it can be confusing. So for you to tell a story that has both linear and non-linear, there really is an art to it. It's not everybody that can do it. In fact, I think the only person who I would say, and he's not even a Nigerian, who knows how to tell that kind of story is Chris Nolan, who knows how to train this kind of elements. And it takes you from here to here to here to, at some point, even if you don't understand it, most people say his story is confusing, to be honest, because of his technique of using the linear and non-linear plotting to tell his story. Now we have the plot points, where the key moments in a story that leads to a new direction. In fact, when I talk to so many storytellers that are scriptwriters, they tell me that the stories that come to them always come to them in plot points. You think of a moment and be like, I like this moment. Like, what if a girl is, let's say, what if a girl visits her father, and the day she visits her father, she buys food for her father, the father eats that food, and he passes and he's poisoned. That's a plot point now. You've now said, this is a story. You now start to build different stories around a girl and her father. So usually plot points, people have plot points in their head. In fact, plot points are usually what creates the concept of stories, because there are key moments that come to you and be like, I like this moment and I would like to capture it. I like to capture it in a way, in a broader story, and I like to raise the stakes. So key moments help you raise the stakes in a story for the protagonist. That is for the main character in the story. It helps you, from this point to this point. This is the key moments. This key moments in this person's life is going to lead to this. This key moment is going to lead to this. It's like jumping points. It's like you're jumping from one point to the other, but in between those jumps are moments that also help you tell, help you explain why this plot point is important. Then you have the rising action and the turning points. Now, rising action is why I like rising action. Even when you're watching films, the music, most music, so that is the sound score, the scores of films, are usually is what is used mostly for rising action. When you're watching a film and it's like there's a rising action happening, and it's that tempo that is trying to create. It's building a tempo for you as for the viewer to follow. So the rising action is, what are those actions that the person is doing, and is building that tension towards the finish line for that person. Now, a scene construction A scene construction is the art of building in the individual dramatic points that move your story forward with a clear purpose, conflict, and change. And what are the rules of a scene? One place, one time, clear dramatic purpose, conflict in every scene. Now, for every scene that you write, a plot and a scene are different. They are different things. A scene is a scene can happen, it happens in one place, one moment, one time, one place. A plot can happen over an act. A plot can happen over an act. In fact, plot is what builds the acts, the three acts of a film. Then scenes build the plots. Think of it that way. Scenes build the plots builds the acts. Now, I mentioned the story of a girl who bought a food for her dad, and the dad eats it, and he passes, and they find out the food is poisoned. Now, that's the plot. You think of the scene. The scene is now, let's say, Bisola enters the room. She sees her dad her dad is lying down on the couch. She greets him. Good morning, sir. Said, hey, good morning, my daughter. How are you? Sir, I'm fine. Said, Daddy, are you hungry? Said, yes, I'm hungry. There's no food though. There's no food in the house. Then why are you asking me? Then why are you asking me if I'm hungry? I'm asking you because I bought food and I want to know if you eat it. He said, okay, but give me the food. And she brings out the nylon, gives him food, and he eats it. That's a scene. That's just one scene. You've done it in a parlor. You've moved forward. You've just done a scene in a parlor now. Now the example written on the material we are reading is also the same thing. It says interior. INT means interior. That means it is shot inside the room. Interior of Mama Tunde's kitchen during the day. Tunde is confronts his mother about school fees. Every dialogue has a goal. The scene ends differently than it began. It's a well-constructed scene. Now, this scene, Tunde enters, just think of it. Tunde enters his mom's kitchen and says, Mommy, did you take any money from under my mattress? The mom turns, which mattress? Which one are you talking about? He said, the money under the mattress. I saw you going there day before yesterday, and now that money is missing. He said, what do you mean money is missing? In my own house, pa. It's my house now. Anything that is in my house is my property. I said, what do you mean anything in your house is your property? So they begin ask her, what do you mean anything in your house is your property? I kept money under my mattress for school fees. I asked you for school money. You say you don't have. I borrowed money and kept under my mattress, and now it's missing. And you're telling me that any money under this thing is your property. Please give me my school fees. If you don't give me that school fees, both of us are not leaving this kitchen. Give me that school fees. He holds his brother's maybe a wrapper or something. Mommy, you must give me that school fees. You refuse to give me school fees. I borrowed school fees, and now you're telling me anything under in your house is your property. Money that I borrowed, Mommy, you must give me that money. And mom said, she starts to shout and everything. After everything, she said, you know what? So you want to, because of 20,000 naira, you want to harass your mom. You want the whole neighbor to know that I took 20,000 naira. Okay, you know what? Bring your phone wire. Let me transfer the money to you. See, this is how you want to treat your mother. No wahala. This is how you want to, because of 20,000 naira. Because of 20,000 naira. This is how you want to treat it. Treat me. And then she transfers money to him. Now, that scene has established something. The dialogue has established something. For every dialogue that you've heard, there is a goal there. There is the confrontation, there is the denial. There is the pressing on a confrontation where he keeps confronting to the point where she can no longer deny. So she's at a risk of being called a thief and does not want to be called a thief. And she has realized since she doesn't want to be called a thief, she has to just accept. And like every other African mother, she now turns it into anything in my house is my property, which prevents you from calling her outrightly a thief. So at the end of the day, she now accepts, because she has seen that he has dug in his heels, she accepts to refund the money. Now, every dialogue here has served a purpose. There is no dialogue here that you will say that has not given you an insight into both characters, because that's the point of a dialogue. It gives you an insight into the both characters, into the situation. He has let you know that she refused to give him school fees. He went to borrow the money. He kept the money under his mattress, and he still lives with his mother. And the mother feels because he lives in her house, she's entitled to everything that's in her house, and she took the money. So it has created a picture. That's the work of the scene. It creates a picture for you. It creates a picture for you, for the audience to understand. There is a clear dramatic purpose to this scene now. Now, remember, this story I've told you might not even be the plot of this film, but it might be a story that tells you maybe that Tunde is a film about Tunde's life, about how Tunde has had a hard life, how he has had to be the man he is. And this scene is one scene in the story that lets you know that even his mother created a difficult life for him. So I just need you to understand that for every scene that helps build a plot, it serves the purpose of the greater story. Now we have the character creation and the character development. Now the character creation, this is you thinking, I have a character, this character, I'm going to name this character Tunde. I'm going to name it Tunde. I want him to come from, I want him to be Yoruba. I want him to come from a poor family. I want him to be tall. I want him to be, I want him to be this. In fact, in script writing, it's called the character Bible. That's what it's called, the character Bible. Um, Sometimes when you go to give for some producers films, they ask you for the character Bible. They want to see the character Bible. And I usually advise people to have your character Bible first before you write a script. You have imagined the whole story. Now, think of the story that we talked about Tunde and his mother. In the character Bible, we're going to have Tunde. We're going to have his mother. Now, Tunde, how old is Tunde? Now, in this part, in how old is Tunde? Tunde is, let's say, we're telling a story about a man who was able to surmount different challenges to become the man that he is, which means that he is now a man. So we are showing a film about a man. Now, that scene that we talked about could be a flashback in the time when he was a student. Could be secondary school, could be university. So now we have Tunde as a character in the Bible. We say Tunde is 41 years old. Tunde is Yoruba. He speaks Yoruba, or he does not speak Yoruba, or he speaks English, he does not speak English. Tunde comes from a poor home, a middle class family, a lower class family, a high class family. Now, how is Tunde? Is Tunde light skinned, dark skinned? Is he tall? Is he tall? Is he not tall? What is his personality like? Is he level-headed, but when pushed to the wall, can flip? Is he someone who is hot-tempered, but his temper ends there? Is he a barking dog that doesn't bite? Or is he a dog that barks and bites? Now, what are his flaws? He's a very generous person, but he doesn't know the limits of his generosity. Maybe what brought him to this point is that he's been so generous in his life that he has willingly given the last shirt on his back to someone and ended up being beaten by rain. So the character Bible helps you define, it's a map of who this person is. Because for every trait, for everything that you've noted about this character is going to be central to the story. If you say Tunde is a very tall man, how is it important to that story? It has to be important to that story. If he's a short man, how is it important to that story? Perhaps when he was growing up, he was not as tall as his friends, and they were calling him cook bottle. And he created an inferiority complex in him that also helped him not push, not become assertive, and which affected him in the business sense, that he's not assertive in the business sense because he feels inferior. When he goes to a room, he feels because I'm a short man, I don't meet up. Or is he a short man who has an overbloated sense of, individuality? Someone who, the hair, I'm sure, so what? He's loud. He tries to overcompensate by being brash, by being loud. So these are the things you look at when you're creating a character. It's called a character Bible. So for every character that's going to be in your story, you have a character Bible for that person. It helps you outline what makes this person tick, what makes this person who they are, because everything they are has to be central to the story you're telling. If I want to tell the story of a bodybuilder, you expect the bodybuilder to be buff, gym bro. You expect him to be a gym bro, muscle bigger than my head. Because when someone sees him, they turn back, be like, let me not fight this person. And this character Bible is also what informs the producers and directors in the kind of actors that they pick. They see your character Bible and know, this actor is going to fit this role because this character physically looks like him. Emotionally, he can deliver on this actor. So it's the character Bible that helps define all these things. Now, character development. This one now comes in when you're now writing the story. Character development is how a character changes, how a character grows throughout a story. Their transformation, you can call it the character arc. You can see a character start off very angry, and by the end of the film, the person has mellowed out. It's a character steps, steps, you start a story about someone who, let's say a story about someone who is estranged from her father and doesn't want to ever talk to her father. So the story starts with her father is calling her, I'm sick, please come and visit me. I'll soon die. I want to connect with you before I pass. And she's like, go to hell. You abandoned me all my life. I don't want to talk to you. And then, the conflict in that story is her trying to become a better person, or trying to become a better person. And then she realizes somehow that to become a better person, she needs to address certain issues in her life. Ergo, talk to her father, who she believes abandoned her. And by the end of the film, we have the conflict where, she refuses to see her father, and people in her life are trying to push her. And she's like, no, I don't want to see him and all that. And maybe, the father dies. And then maybe after the death of her father, now she has to come to terms with her father's death. Somehow, it's her father. Something happens and she has to come to terms with her father's death. And by the time she now learns her father's story, she then realizes that he did not abandon me. There were circumstances beyond his control that separated us. Now she has moved from being an angry person to someone who has become kinder, someone who has become more understanding. You see her character changing over time. You can see her changing from who she is to who she is now. Sometimes you also have villains in films do that, where you see a character, very normal character, and by the time the person has gone through fire and brimstone, the person becomes evil because it becomes a mean person, becomes evil. These are character arcs, things that happen in someone's life that makes them change, that makes them decide, I'm not going to be the person that you knew me as. I'm going to become this new person. It could be for good, it could be for bad. So these are the things that's the character development. And then we have the protagonist, we have the antagonist. In Nigeria, we say the boss and the actor. That's the balance we know. The actor is the protagonist and the boss is the antagonist. And that comes from us watching Chinese films, Chinese Indian films as early time. So we had the, when they say boss is, when you're watching action film and they say boss, 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 boss. So Nigeria said boss. So that's where it comes from. Then the actor is like the main character, the protagonist, the one that everything, the good guy kind of. So the good guy is usually the hero. He has a goal, he has a flaw, he has a strength. He has to, something has to give for him to achieve his goal. Then you have the protagonist, the antagonist, who is the boss, as we say here. That's the boss, the boss. That's the force that is trying to prevent the hero from becoming who he is. Like he said, sometimes he's not always a villain. Sometimes it could be a system. Sometimes it could be a family. Sometimes it could be a belief that is preventing this person, preventing the protagonist from achieving his goal. Then we talked about character arc, which is the character development. How does each character change? What's the emotional journey of this person? Who were they when they started? Who are they now when it ended? I mean, if you're going to tell me a story where the character is the same, I don't think anybody will want to watch that. Really, it's. I mean, even think of you as a human being. We all have character arcs. You know, you think of when you've greeted someone. Maybe every morning you go out, you greet your neighbor. Good morning. She does not talk to you. You greet her to next tomorrow. Good morning. She does not say. You've greeted her 5 times in 5 days. Good morning. On the sixth day, you be like, to hell with her. I know they greet again. That's a character arc. You've changed. You're no longer the person that used to greet to someone who that you're no longer the person who used to greet now to someone who refuses to greet. There's a character arc, so that's basically what it is. So the conflict, which is the core of the drama, this is the whole reason everybody's watching your film. This is the whole reason the script to be greenlit by a studio or a producer. Is the conflict that everybody wants to know. Oh, what happened? This is happening. What happened? It's the opposition between forces that creates tension and drives the story. It is the thing that keeps your audience engaged and invested in the outcome. Think of the old films that we watched, Egg of Life, all those epic films where something happens in in society, the community, the village, and they say, "Oh, everybody, people are dying. People are dying in the community. The gods have cursed us, and for us to live now, we have to travel 7 seas and 7 mountains to get the egg of life." Now, how is that? How is that now? Now a community is dying, and they have to be saved. That's the conflict. They have to be saved. That the conflict, the community is dying. They have to be saved. Now, who is going to save them? Who is going to save them? So we have that internal conflict, which is we have an internal conflict and external conflict. Internal conflict is when it's an internal, it's a personal battle, put it that way, a personal battle where you have to choose between, yourself, you have to do something. Your family wants you to be a doctor, you want to be a scriptwriter, and, somehow they're making sense to you when they say you have to be the logic they're giving you on why you should become a medical doctor makes sense, but you really, really know that you want to become this thing. You want to become a scripter. You have stories to tell. So you have that internal battle to go with these people or to go with my parents, or to not go with them. That's the internal conflict. Then you have the external conflict where you have a village that is being threatened by what? A disease, could be someone. And something has to be done. Something is threatening it. And something has to be brought for it to stop the community from being threatened. So what has to be done now? What's that external thing that you have to do? That's the external conflict that is plaguing the village. What's that thing that is making them want to solve their problem? That's making them want to go out, find the solution to their problem. That's the external conflict. It's an external, it comes from the out. It comes from the out. Internal is that you are seeing sense between this and this. It's internal because you believe, yes, your parents are right. You also want to do what you want to do, but inside you're conflicted. Like, do I go with my parents, or do I or do I do this? It's a personal battle that you have to fight. Then external is, you have to fight something else. Something else. It could be physical or not physical, but something else is fighting you, is fighting a community, is fighting, a group of people, and they have to battle it before they can solve their problem. So dialogue, we've talked about dialogue, and I've given you an example of a dialogue. A dialogue is what, makes is what creates purposeful conversations as is written. It can reveal a character, it can reveal a plot, it can advance a plot, and it needs to sound natural. When people are talking in a film, in fact, when you're written, there's this complaint now that people say about films written by AI. And if you pay attention, it's actually a very big problem. Because when you get AI to write a dialogue, like it writes tilted dialogue. What is a dialogue that has no a dialogue that is not attached to feeling, is not attached to action, is not attached to circumstances. A dialogue has to feel natural. It has to feel like the way someone talks. I mean, if you're going to create a character that talks without punctuation, and when I mean punctuation, I mean the person doesn't have, person is just talking, and listen. Let it be that that's the person's character. Like that's the person's, with your character Bible, you say, this is the thing that marks this character. The person does not have, punctuation. The person just talks without listening. But if you're going to create all your characters to just talk without listening, no pause, no pause, nothing. I don't think anyone will be interested in that kind of story. A dialogue has to feel natural. It has to feel like someone talking. Like, what's wrong with you? Now, when you ask what's wrong with you, it depends on the context. If you were doing something bad and I said, what's wrong with you? You're going to be defensive. And your answer to me is going to come out defensive. If maybe you're shivering and I say, what's wrong with you? You say, I'm not feeling too well. It's going to show, because this is visual storytelling. Your dialogue has to match the actions. It has to lift the actions. It has to, elaborate more on what is being shown to the audience. Then you have the subtext, which we know that our mothers are very good at. You know, please go and bring me a cup of water. Say, where do I keep it? Say, keep it on my head. But you're watching the film, it's a subtext. You know what she means. That she's mocking the child. Like, since you don't have sense, or come and keep it on my head. So subtexts are actually important in storytelling, but don't overdo it, because the last thing you want is to give your audience too much task where they are spending their time figuring out whether this makes sense or does not make sense. But always know that human beings talk naturally, and we talk with a lot of nuance, talk with a lot of subtext. And when you are telling stories, it should reflect like that. And even on the nose dialogue, yes, when you say, okay, sometimes you read a script and you're like, this could be said better. It's too on the nose. Like, it's as if you're spoon feeding your audience. I'm angry. I'm angry because you betrayed me. I mean, it should be shown. There are actions, there are things that should be done before the person, I'm angry. And the person can now say, oh, why are you angry? And the way the person looks at the character, like, are you kidding me? Are you trying to say you don't know why I'm angry? You have to avoid that direct, like, spoon feeding your audience. You have to allow the action help lift dialogue. In fact, the action should even come first before the dialogue. Because the dialogue will now sort of, if you had any doubt when in the action, the dialogue's role is to now provide that clarity. But if you're going to always like spoon feed your audience by telling them, you're telling them what's happening, well, it's going to be a very tedious watch. Before you overwrite your fadu, is it the last place? So script formatting. Sorry about that. Script formatting. Please, if you have any questions, please drop it in the chat so that it will be collated and I can answer it, because some of you might ask the same questions and I will need to review it so I can give you an answer that is, tailored to the question that you asked. So please, if you have any question that arises as I'm talking, please just write question with colon and then ask your question so that it could be collated and I can answer it once and for all. So now we're getting to script formatting. We've talked about we've talked about the kinds of scripts. We've talked about elements of script writing, the three acts, format of storytelling and all those things. Now the cocoa, which is the script formatting, this is the one that differentiates you from others. Script has its formats. It's a standardized layout and structure that makes your screenplay easy to read and understand for anyone in the production process. As long as you're a filmmaker, you call yourself a filmmaker, you must learn script writing formats because it's what's going to differentiate you from others. In fact, it's what's going to make your script stand out. A well-formatted script is going to be given attention more than a script that is not formatted, no matter how great the story is. No producer wants to be wasting their time on a story that is not formatted. If you're saying I'm a script writer, what is expected from me is a properly scripted document. So we have the standard format rules and we have the scene headings. The scene headings establishes where and time, place and time. You have the INT, you have the EXT, that is interior, exterior. Interior is anything that is happening inside. Exterior is anything that is happening wherever the sun or the moon is shining. So interior is inside. Exterior, well, just think of it wherever the moon or the sun is shining. And it's on your head. Exterior. Interior is when you're inside. Then the time. The time you can say day, night. Now for the characters are usually written in caps, capital letters. And it comes before the dialogue. And the dialogue is centered on a page, unlike the action lines. So I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to learn the difference between these things, the dialogue, action lines. For example, if you look at this now, Bello sits alone under a flickering bulb. He stares at a letter. That's an action. Bello quietly. So this is how it ends. That's the dialogue. So, and they're all formatted differently on a script. So this is a sample that you can take a look at. It shows you what a standardized script formatted script looks like. You have the action lines, log lines, character names, the dialogue, parentheticals, and transition. So you have the headlines here. That is the interior, Lagos apartment, time, night. Then you have the character. You see the parentheses, the 28. That's her age. That tells the actor, that tells the producer the age of the actress. And if you notice here, the character is written, even though the character is not saying anything yet, it's still captured in a capital letter. So Amaka, 28, which means 28 years old, exhausted from work, enters her small but tidy apartment. She drops her bag on the couch and notices a letter on the floor. She picks it up, her hands trembling as she recognizes the handwriting. Now, this is the action. This is the action. Because when the producer says action, this is Amaka entering. And this is her going through the motions until she says or whispers, it can be. Now, that's the dialogue. Now we're back to action where she tears open the envelope and reads. Her eyes widen. He's alive. which she says out loud too. Now, the continued there, if you see here until that's continued, that means her whispering continues. The dialogue continues, her whispering is continuing. So there is no break in the action there. Just the movement that you notice, move, enter, pick a letter, opens it, her eyes widen. And when her eyes widen, if you go back to what we said about show, don't tell. We're able to capture the show here before she tells us. Her eyes widen shows you shock, surprise. And her say he's alive confirms it, that whoever is alive, she's shocked to hear that he's alive, or surprised to hear that he's alive. So that is a standard formatting of a script. This is exactly what it looks like. And you have fade out. So the fade out is called the transition. So this one is people in the post-production that know how to do that, would, they know how to, when you watch, if you're watching a film and there are different types of transition. If you pay attention to film, if you pay attention to films, there are actually different types of transition. And the more you watch films and learn about these transitions, the easier it is for you. And trust me, transitions are also critical to storytelling. The way a film transitions to the next one is also a storytelling technique. And it's something you have to learn because there are different kinds of transitions. So, but we're going to come to that later on in the class. So, setting, world building. The world building is one of my favorite words and phrases in filmmaking and script writing. Setting, we've already talked about setting. The setting is a specific time and place where your story is unfolding. Inside the market, inside the village, during the Civil War. What time is it? This film is going to be shot in Lagos, but it's going to be set in 1960s. That's the setting. It's going to be shot in Enugu during the Civil War time. That is late 1960s. That's the setting. It's going to be shot inside the university campus. That's a setting. Now, world building is a complete environment. It's like setting the culture, the rules. In fact, what is the rule of this world? What's the atmosphere like? So think of, you want to create a civil war, you want to do a world building for a civil war timepiece. Now, if you're doing that timepiece now, if you're let's say you're setting it in Southeast, you're doing world building of a period in Southeast. What are the elements that helps create that world? Because the world of late 1960s is different from the world of 2026. It's a different world. What's that atmosphere like? What's the culture like? In that world building, you're looking at the costumes. That means that for everybody that appears in that story, in that world, they are dressed to match the time period. Their hair matches the time period. Their makeup matches the time period. Their shoes, everything about it, even the way they speak matches the time period, because the way they spoke in 1960s is different from the way we speak now. If you doubt me, go and look at clips from the 1960s where they interviewed people and just random people. Just listen to the way they speak English and the way we speak now. Different. So their world was a different world and ours is a different world. Even when you're showing the atmosphere, the setting, you can't come and start showing MTN in a MTN building in the 1960s, in a 1960s film. How and why? It doesn't belong in that world. It doesn't belong in the world of that time. Now, let's say you want to do one if you want to do one in Enugu now, what you're going to do, rather than you see Eastern Nigerian Assembly. Well, you're not going to see Enugu State House of Assembly as it is now. What you're going to see is Eastern Nigerian Assembly, because that was what the building was noted. So when you're building a world, you're thinking of all these elements. You want to set your story in 1960s. What are the elements of that place? That time and location. What was the mood like? Okay, if you're telling the story, is Harmattan critical to that story? Is rainy season critical to that story? what is it about that story? What mood do you want to create? If you pay attention to Hollywood films, you realize that different eras have different filters. It's deliberate. Different eras. If they want to show you 1920s America, the filter of that period, that is the mood of that period is different from the mood of 2026. If they also if you want to also see local settings, for example, um you want to show like a church in the 1960s, you cannot show a church that has aluminium windows now. When did aluminium come into being in Nigeria? You cannot show the ones that have what's it called, aluminium rooftops. When did aluminium this thing come? So you have to factor in these things in your world building. Think of the cultural context, the mood, the atmosphere. When you just think this film is going to be set in this time, this is how it's going to be. In fact, let me tell you a secret. There's a reason why most of the films that you see in Nigeria are set in the present. It's because it costs a lot of money to recreate sets. It costs a lot of money to even go and use iconic buildings, that is legacy buildings, to shoot a film. Hollywood has been able to figure that out because Hollywood built sets of different cities in different eras. As in, you come to a place and they've built a massive set, so you can act as if you're in a time period. But in Nigeria, we have that constraint, the funding constraint, the know-how constraint of buildings at that scale. So that's why we notice that a lot of films have, you notice that they are set in the present. And when you even see some films that were set in 1960s, they're mostly interior. There are a lot of exteriors they can control. If you want to shoot 1960s film, you best believe me that most of that story is going to be happening inside the house, because it's easy to bring a couch, it's easy to bring a TV of 1960s, it's easy to change the clock, it's easy to change the paints, it's easy to bring calendar, it's easy to change fan, it's easy to change curtains, it's easy to change these elements. But if you now step out of it into where you're going to show main road and a G-Wagon is passing inside the 1960. Okay, so that's it about setting and world building. So theme and message. So what is the central theme of a story? So message is different from theme. I need you to understand that. What is the central idea of this thing? What is it exploring? Oh, this film is about betrayal. This film is about love. In fact, once you just tell people that this film is about love, they'll be like, okay, yeah, all right, let's hear more about it. So what's the message you want people to take away from it? You want them to take away a message that love is blind, or love wears goggles. So these are the things, like the theme and the message. What is the central idea / theme? And then what is the message you want them to learn? Then pacing and reading. So pacing is the speed at which your story unfolds. How quickly does your story unfold? How slowly does it unfold? Now, I need you to know that there are films that are called slow burn films, which is because their pacing are slow. The pacing of the films is slow. So they're called the slow burn films, because of their pacing. But it's an art. There's an art to doing slow burn films. And also, when you're pacing your film, you're pacing it according to how you want the story to be told, how you want it to unfold. If a story needs speed and you're unfolding it slowly, it's not going to translate well. If a story needs pacing and you're speeding it up, it's also going to cause problem. Now we have the rhythm of a story. So what's the rhythm of a story? That is what's the motion you're taking me through? Action, rest, tension, release, dialogue, silence. All these things are important. What's the rhythm and pattern of your storytelling? It shouldn't be flat. It should be like the signal going up, down, up. It should be like a graph where taking your audience up, you're bringing them down, you're taking them up. You take them through this motion of emotions that by the time they come out, they're like, wow. Wow, 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 wow. This is quite, I mean, this film really, it really drew me out. Then you think of the story speed, you think of the emotional beats, you think of the scene length. The scene length of a film. What in a scene? How many? What should the scene length be like? A story speed. What should the speed be like? Emotional beats. What is the tension that is following? That will be followed by a relief. You need to build tension and then drop. Build tension and drop because that's what keeps your audience engaged. So stakes. What can be gained? So what are the stake? Every film has a stake. So what you say, what's the stake here? What's the emotional stake? What's the physical stake? What's the moral stake? You know, will Adora, sorry, lose her mom's love if she marries outside her tribe? There's an emotional stake to that. Will Chukwu Emeka survive the night in a dangerous part of Ajegunle? That's a physical stake because he could lose his life. Will Bello compromise his integrity to save his family from poverty? That's a moral stake. So these are the kind of stakes that you have to lose or gain in a story. There's suspense and tension. So suspense and tension. This is what everyone is familiar with. Oh, this film has suspense. This film has tension. Now, a suspense is the feeling of anticipation or uncertainty about what will happen next. I'm like, you're watching it, you don't know. You're like, gang, what's going to happen? You don't know. The intention is that emotional pressure that comes from the conflict and danger. Is the feeling that something can go wrong now. You don't know yet, but something could go wrong now. Something that boosts that feeling. And like I explained before, usually music accompanies tension in films. So you build what you're trying to do here is you're building anticipation and you're building anticipation for the audience to look forward to something coming. And then there's this delayed outcome. You're not trying to resolve the story quickly. You're not trying to resolve the tension quickly because you don't want you make the audience wait, but not too much. But you give them that thing that they feel satisfied when it comes. Then the cliffhanger is, when you end a scene or an episode at the worst possible moment. Think of telemundos that you watch, like all these Spanish telenovelas. They end films or they end TV series parts where you're like, I need to know more now. In fact, when you think of things like what is this popular TV show that time on TV, the Wala Denuga show. I've forgotten the name, but the hmm? Super Story. Super Stories, this is end on cliffhangers because they need you to come back for more. Like, what happened? Watch out next for what happens. That's a cliffhanger, and that's an art to an art of visually engaging your audience and bringing them back to the screen. Now, point of view is the perspective in which a story is told. My point of view, your point of view, his point of view, her point of view. So, whose eyes are we seeing this story through? Is it from the character? Is it from another person? Or is it from a narrator's point of view? Every script has a POV, the lens through which the audience experiences an event. um is it the character story, is it the main character story, or is it another person's story, is it another person's story, trying to give us a clear view of something that happened, from the eyes of someone. Now, this helps us with audience alignment because we get to see, the audience are sort of they can be fickle with their emotions. So when a character is telling a story, they sort of attach themselves to that person. They want to root for you. They want to, they are rooting for you. They want to know, they want you to win, and they want another person to lose. So that's how it is. Your script has to have a story that have people either rooting or not rooting for someone. Sorry. Sorry, I think I made a mistake. So openings and endings. So writing an opening is the craft of, you see, they say an opening scene. So when you're opening a scene on your script, it has to be very engaging. You have to, it's what keeps the audience on the seats. I don't know whether you've seen cases where you put a film, you watch a film, you put a film, and your father or mother is passing, and they watch the opening scene, and the person that is telling you he's busy comes to sit down to watch, is because the opening scene was so engaging to hold his or her focus. So being able to write an opening scene is actually a skill that is really important, because it's what determines whether someone is going to sit through your film. And that same thing applies in writing endings. Writing a conclusion that's, sometimes conclusions are not necessarily satisfying, but it resolves a conflict and leaves an impact. In fact, I think the most important thing here is that it leaves an impact on the viewer, because not only is it grabbing its attention, it leaves them when they walk out of that film. They can still reference when they think about that film. It gives them something to think about. And now we talk about the hooks. What's the hook in your story? What's the hook in your story? Your opening must grab attention, has to drop the audience into an action, mystery, or compelling character. So that's why an opening has to be very catchy. It's the first hook that gets people sitting down. Is it we open it and they're chasing someone? Is it we open it and someone is dropping dead? Is it we open it and someone is trying to steal a formula? Like, what is that thing that makes someone sit down like, okay, this looks interesting? And that conclusion has to be earned. It has to resolve the conflict. Like I said, the most important thing in an ending is it has to leave an impact. It has to resolve and leave an impact with the audience to take home. So we go to the next one, which is what makes a good script. It has to be clear, has to be engaging, has to be visual, structured, and producible. And producible, it means that a production manager, a director should look at it and say, yes, we can shoot this thing as easily as possible. So what are the qualities of a good script? We have 10 here. You have the clear story purpose. What's the purpose of this story? It has to be clear. We have the strong characters. Every character, even your waka pass, must have a purpose. It has to have a purpose in that story. It has to be strong. Then the conflict has to be meaningful, not something that we say this is no food belly. It has to be very meaningful, and it has to have a clear act structure. We've talked about it: a beginning, middle, and an end. And the visual storytelling has to capture. It has to more of show and don't tell. And then when you're telling in a dialogue, it has to be purposeful. It has to be something that adds meaning to the scene that is being watched. And then the proper formatting. Think of the standard formatting that we have, talked about, and all that. You have to learn your formatting. And the realistic production scope. That's why I'm saying, please, if you want to be a scriptwriter, even if you're not acting, just go to a set, sit down and watch. You're going to learn so much about production that it will be so easy for you to translate on your scripts. Then we need a clear theme. What's the theme of your scripts? This is where the theme, love, betrayal, corruption, kills, all those sort of things. Really, really important. Then we have the emotional impact. We have the emotional impact because this is where people feel good about your film. The impact of the film. They have to feel good about it. They leave they read your script and they say, I love this script. Emotionally, I connect with it. So that's what it's about. Then okay, so the script writing process. Now we have, like I said, the idea. You are thinking of the idea, you're thinking of the story, the initial spark, the concept. Then you think of the outline. Sorry, think of the treatment, sorry, where you side by side. Okay. Okay, so the script writing process. So we're going to take the ideas, treatment, the outline, and the first draft. So now we have the idea generation, the concept development. This is when the idea comes to you, wherever you are. You have this need to tell a story. Then you define the concept. Is this thing a thriller? Is it a comedy? What is it? And what is this story about? What is this story basically about? And then who is the audience this story is for? Is it for children? Is it for adults? Is it for a general? Who is it for? Is it for Nigerians? Is it a film for international audience? This is where it comes in. Then, how do you source for your story ideas? Really, I think this defines itself. And I'll always tell someone, I always tell everybody, just be open to yourself, because inspiration comes from anywhere. It can come from personal experience, from observation, from hearing other people's stories, from even the stories you hear, from history, from reading, from even your imagination. Like, what if I can, what if this story is told this way? From your dreams, from books, from films, from music, from traditions, from, social issues, from writing prompts that you've seen, from images that you've seen, from basically anywhere. Just allow the God of Muse to take a hold of you, and you can find your story idea. The log line, I've mentioned the log line before, because I said this is what sells a film. Basically, in fact, when you want to watch a film on like Netflix, or even African Magic, the log line is that one they wrote. They say a young girl from Aba wants to do. That is exactly what a log line is. And it's some producers said you just send your log line, and they get to know if your story is interesting. And as you can see, is your entire story in one sentence. Your entire story in just one sentence. Think of it. A young woman from Aba who wants to reclaim her father's stolen business must outwit a powerful Lagos senator before her family loses everything and her father's legacy is raised forever. We have 4 elements here. We have the who, the what does she want, what is standing in her way, and what is at stake. So these 4 elements is what gives you a complete sentence of a log line. Now, the story treatment is a very important, this is very important, because this is where you do the prose summary of your entire story. You have your story, and then you now sort of tell the host, this is where you now write the whole, like the plotting, the full plotting of the story, like, oh, and she went here and so, but it's not detailed, but just a summary of your story. It has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. And it's usually written short. In fact, I always say, if your story treatment cannot be less than 500 words, you have to go back and write it to 500 words. It has to be a page of MS Word. MS Word, really. It has to be a page of an MS Word document. So it's what's the entire summary of your story, the beginning, middle, and end, fully revealed, and has to be written in present tense with a vivid narrative style. And this is what they can this is what the producers would look at and say yes. So when I say written in prose, when I say it has to be written in prose, there's no dialogue, there's no scene headings, it's just like writing a short story. It's just like after reading a book, I say, give me the summary of that story. You now write it and give it to me. That's what it is. Then you use present tense. He runs, he runs, she runs, she discovers, he discovers. You don't go to past tense, because you're trying, why? You're trying to immerse the person in the present, to feel the story as if, to watch it as it's unfolding. That's why you use the present tense. And you tell the whole story. There's no need, like I said, once you capture the beginning, middle, and end, you tell the whole story, because they are looking for the clarity they're looking for how you're able to move from act 1, act 2, act 3 without you keeping, they're not there for the suspense. It's when you now do the full script that they are here. They can say, okay, suspense, no wahala. And keep it visual. Keep it very visual. Keep the key action point, the turning point. Focus on what we can see happening. Like I said, the whole point is to immerse the person in your summary, to read it and immerse themselves and see it in their mind's eye. Because most people read and imagine, and that's what you want to achieve. So treatment length. So what does the treatment length? So treatment length, short films, 1 to 2 pages. For feature length, 3 to 10 pages. TV series pilots, 5 to 15 pages. Depending on the series. So we have an example here, which you can take a look at later, which says Chinedu, a struggling journalist, uncovers evidence linking a powerful politician to a missing child. As threat closes in, he races against time to protect the evidence. Where his closest ally betrays him, Chinedu must choose between survival and exposing the truth. In the final act, he releases the story publicly, accepting the consequences. Now, this is an excerpt of a treatment example that is really short. It's really short, but typically it can be between 500 words to 500 words to 1,500 words. But why I usually say what 500 words is, if it's interesting, people will always ask you for more. If no one gets your story in the first 500 words, I don't think the next page is important to them. So research is very, very important in script writing, in storytelling. Like if you're going to be doing a world building, please, it's important. Even if you're doing fantasy, your fantasy has to make sense. I mean, think of the kind of world that Harry Potter is, and we've most of us have watched Harry Potter. Just think of that world building, you know, research that was done into it, and created a world that we can feel, we can understand in a way. So if you're creating your story in a community, you have to research their customs, their language, their values, because the last thing you want to do is to misrepresent a people. Do not misrepresent. If you're going to set it in a place that is real, you do not misrepresent the people. You have to research and know what makes these people who they are. What are the nuances or context in their culture that I can capture in this story that makes this story full. It has to be authentic, that when people watch it, they feel, yes, this story, I understand. This story, I feel it. Leaning into stereotypes, that's why I say misrepresentation. Stereotypes is what makes people cancel their film, really. A film is released and people start shouting, cancel this film, oh, it's showing us as bad people. That's it. So you have to stay away from lazy stereotypes. Always research. And if you're saying a character is a lawyer, please, and the person is going to be using lawyer lingo, do your research. Research lawyer lingos. If you're going to do a court setting, please do your research from the props to the dialogue, everything. Do your research. Do not misrepresent people, because it's accurate details that actually make people look at the story and say, this story is believable. Now, for story outline or the beat sheet, so you have the act one, like I said. So you have the three acts. You have the act one beats. You have the act one that introduces the world, the character, the inciting incident. Sorry. You have the one that introduces the world, the character, the inciting incident. And then you have the major turning points where the story starts to shift. We begin to feel the story shifting in the middle. And at this point, you're also approaching the midpoint. That is where we are going to have like a major revelation, or reversal. And then we're now going to have the climax and the resolution. So this beat sheet is like your map. It prevents you from getting lost in your scripts, as it says, because that's where most storytellers tend to like lose it in the middle. We always have clarity on how your story starts, but in the middle, that's when we start having tentacles. So, but this beat sheet helps act one, you're introducing your character. And then in the act two, that's where you have your major turning points and midpoints. This is where your converging points, where you're now sort of doing your major, revelation or conflict. That's where the conflict becomes clearer, where the revelation is going to be, that reveals the things that are going wrong. And then the act three is now where we're approaching, where we get to the climax, the resolution, and the final, image that we are going to see. So you use this, act one, act two. Act two has your major turning points to your midpoint, and then your act three. Then writing the first draft. Now, for every story you're going to submit to someone, they always tell you the first draft. So your first draft, please, it's not a race to the author. Write freely, but yeah, use the format, the standard formatting, but write freely. Your first draft is not meant to be your final draft. It's supposed to be what brings your work into existence. In fact, if you tell someone I have a story, and they say, "Can I see your first draft?" and you say, "I haven't written it," they will never take you serious. But if you say, "I have a script, can I see your first draft?" Yes, and you show the first draft, they can say, "Oh, I like this story. Now let's talk about the second draft of it." So your first draft is actually what brings that story into existence. Is what's going to show people that you're actually serious. When you say a script writer, this is what makes you serious. That they can see the first draft. There is not just in your head. Because if it's in your head, then there is no, then it's still in your head. So please, 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 first draft, do not try to make it perfect. Just write. Then by the time you submit it, people now try that's where the producers, everybody involved in the film, now tries to make it perfect. So the structure, that's the writing and draft development. So by the time you finish your draft, your first draft, you can now have the structural rewrite. But this is where people who are going to work with this script are going to now look at and tell you, okay, this is it, this is it, this is not it, this is not it. This dialogue does not make sense. This dialogue makes sense. The characters, this character, maybe not this way, maybe in this way. So is after you've written your first draft, this is where when people are going to give you corrections, when they're going to give you revisions, this is where that restructural, rewrite, dialogue polish, and character refinement comes in. That's where you now make the fight. Then you now rewrite the work to meet the standard for production. Like I said, feedback and script coverage. This is where it's your script, which is usually the first draft. You send it to someone who evaluates the scripts, they assess it, the characters, the dialogue, and everything, and check the commercial viability. In fact, they will tell you, this script is best for streaming, is not best for cinema. It's best is best for streaming as a series, is not best for streaming as a film. So there are people who are whose work, in fact, when you send your script to a producer, they have people in their team whose work is to do this, to analyze your script, evaluate it, and say, okay, this is where this is how the script will fit in. This is the commercial viability of this film. Because remember, at the end of the day, anybody that is commissioning your film is commissioning it based on the commercial viability. Nobody wants to make a film and lose money. So always know that. And yeah, so they decide that's the film, that's called this feedback and script coverage. So they use it to figure out how best your film would do in the market and who would best receive it. So, and whenever you send this thing, please, whenever you send it, please, it's not a suggestion, actually, it's for you to get better on the script. Now, the final polish is where you've now applied these corrections. You've applied the corrections given to you. Everything is working well. The formatting is perfect. The dialogue is everything is tip-top shape. Then the script is now, you send it out and everyone says perfect, 100%. The script is now locked, and the production team can now say, let's green light this script, which means it's going into production. Now, the script breakdown, pre-production. We have the characters, you have the location, you have the props and costume. That's why I said, please, if you're going to be a scriptwriter, go and spend some time on a set. I take God beg you, please. It's going to teach you a lot. Now, I have the pre-production. Now, pre-production is before, when everybody is they're still deciding on the characters, the locations, the props and set, the setting, everything. So this is a script. This is what comes into a script breakdown: the characters, the locations, the props and costumes, the hair, makeup, and all that is also part of the props and costumes. Then table read and final adjustment. So by the time when the script is ready, the actors have been commissioned, engaged, everything is done. Then the table read is done, which is all the actors that have been earmarked to play each role will be invited for a table read. Though the script will be printed and given to each of them, and they will all read their characters. They will all read their characters. As they're reading their characters, the producer and the director is getting the feel of the getting the feel of the story, how it's going to evolve, how it's going to play out on screen. They are looking at, because even at that, in the table read, some actors will tell you, oh, this doesn't sound natural, please correct this, let me say this in Yoruba, it will turn out to be better. So that's why they do table read, because they are testing not just the script viability, but how the actors, the emotional connection of the actors to the stories, to the dialogue. And then after that, that's when the final adjustment is now made, and then film is shot. Then the production draft is now produced, and this is the draft that goes on scene. This is this on set. This is the scrap, the version that will be printed multiple copies, and you're going to see this on set. Is the production ready script? Everything has been locked down. Everything from costume to the locations and sound. Everything has been locked in. So I always say that filmmaking is like cooking a pot of soup, but this time around is a community that is cooking it. It's a pot of soup that everybody has to cook. So you're bringing your best ingredients, you're bringing your best utensil, and as a script writer, you have to understand that it's a collaborative journey. The story that you've written might be great, but it might not translate well on screen. So that's where you have the director, the production manager, and all these people who come on set, even the script supervisor, who come and look at your script and say, this works, this does not work. That's why you also have actors. Some actors can look at your script and tell you, well, I think if I say this in local language, it should gel. So it's a collaborative journey, and I don't want you to be rigid about it. Always be open to suggestions, always be open to collaborations, always be open to making your work better and translating it on screen. So we have the pre-production, we have the production, we have the post-production and the release. These are the stages of this. In fact, this is your script journey from pre-production to production, then post-production. Even in post-production, your script is going to be on the table of whoever is going to be editing, whoever is going to be doing subtitling. Your script, that journey, it will go that long until the film is released. And if these days, audiences now even request for scripts, they tell you publish the scripts. So your script self is not even ending just after post-production. It's still going to continue after it's been released, because people want to see the scripts. Ethics, ownership, and credit. So copyright basics. Your script should be copyrighted from the beginning. This is your property, but you have to record it with the Copyright Commission. If you go online, you just Google them, you can find information on that. Writer's credits, your name has to be there because that's your work. It's your professional reputation. It's your legacy in the film industry. So your name written by, you put your name there. If you're going by an alias, good for you, whatever, but your name credit must be given to you. And it's your intellectual property. Do not go and copy another person's story. Originality is ethical and a legal requirement in this. The last thing you want is for you to, after producing a film, someone comes to accuse you of stealing the story. Everybody is going to, even the producer, the director is going to sue you for giving them a story that is plagiarized. So please, plagiarism is a no in this industry. It can cost you your life and your money. So please always be original and authentic. So the commoner's mistake, skipping this treatment, the weak conflicts, too much dialogue, editing too early. These are the mistakes that people tend to make when working on the scripts. So we have lingota. We have this spell. Okay. So for reference purposes, you can check this out because we now have, you can get the script writing lingo. And the slide is also published in the app, where the school app, Link School, in the Link School app, where you can get these things. So please for every class that is done, always check out the references so you can learn more and be a better writer. So I think we've come to the end. So see, these are the script writing lingos. Check them out in the reference, and they're self-explanatory. You don't need me. Very self-explanatory. And the part if I had, please, you can Google and find more information. But it's very easy to understand. So please check out your reference and all that. This is where I should come to. Yes. So I just need you to know your story matters. And like Chino Achebe said, if you hear a story and you don't like it, please write your own because your story matters. So please figure out, just this class is very important. Just take cognizance of what has been taught. Keep practicing. One thing about script writing is like writing a book. The more you write, the better you get at it. So you have the three levels of mastery, where you can tell a story, you move people, and then you can write script for production, and then you become a professional. So please, my goal is for everyone to be a master of this craft. So please pay attention to the classes and write more, tell more stories. People are watching, people are waiting to hear what you have to write or what you have to say. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions, please, I will answer. Let me see. People should clap now. Sheba have been talking. Hey, Jesus Christ. Nobody even offered me water. Nobody even said, ha, moderator, have they given you water there? Hey, I'm now satisfied. So if you have any questions, please, I think, okay, I'm seeing, okay, someone asked, is it right to publish your script? I mean, why would people request for your script? I think that is a personal decision, really. When people say, oh, publish your script, that's a personal decision. Sometimes people are immersed in a story. After watching the film, they want to get immersed more. You have the process of the filmmaking, really. It's more about the process of the filmmaking. That's why they say, please, some people request that you publish your scripts. And I think it's also a way of, if you publish your scripts, really, I think it's also a way of establishing mastery. Anyone who reads your script can say, oh, this person is a good writer. And you can easily get a next gig from it. Let me see another question. Sorry. Is the first draft a summary of the entire story? No, 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 please. The first draft is not an entire. We said treatment is a story, is a summary of the entire story. Please refer back to your notes. Treatment is the summary. A first draft is that you have that you're right. You've said I want to write a script, and now you sat down and started writing it. First draft is that you've written this thing, you formatted it. Now everybody knows that you've written a story, you've written this draft, you've written a script. It's at this point that you can say, I've written a script. Then I ask you, first draft, you say yes, first draft. As long as you don't have it formatted in that document, it's not a script. The moment you write that first one, format it and all that, it becomes a script. And that first one you've written is a first draft. The other one, treatment, is where you just do the plotting summary and all that. That's it. Uh, is there any question there? Am I missing any question? Am I missing any question, please? I Is script writing the same as playwriting? Yes, if you refer back to, I think the first slides, around the first slides we share, script writing is a generic, we say script writing, script writing is a generic name for writing of scripts. Now, there are different kinds of scripts. You can write stage play, script for stage play, script for drama, radio drama, script for adverts, script for this and that. For films, that is films and television, we call it screenplay writing because it's screen playing. It's playing on the screen. So you can say, oh, I'm a script writer. I say, oh, what kind? A screenplay writer. So that differentiates you from others. You can say, I'm a script writer. What kind? Stage play. I'm a script writer. What kind? Radio drama. So script writing is a generic name. But for film and television, that's screenplay writing. Okay, so I think this Marotala Yusuf, I think someone the teammates will get back to you on the question on how to the issue you're having with the modules. So please take note. Marotala Yusuf is okay. So for everyone. I'm going to exit once I finish the question, and then it's going to continue. Please don't log out yet. The admin is going to take you through certain things, so please don't log out yet. For the person asking first draft, I've said that before. I'm still looking out for any other question. Any other question? Can a script writer edit his or her script? So this is what I think. This is what I say to people. Really, I'm a writer. I don't edit myself. But if you write and give me, I can edit your work. I don't know if you understand. I'm a writer, but I don't edit my work. But if you write and give me, I'll edit your work. Reason. Sometimes, most times, when you're writing, you have certain words in your head, you have certain things in your head which you think you've written, and when you're reading it, somehow those words in your head is what comes out on paper, not what you've written. It happens a lot. I forgot it's called, there's a phenomenon it's called. So it's best when you've written your scripts to give to someone who can edit. You try as much as possible to edit the word as you can edit, but you find someone who will be a script editor who can also edit it and look at words, phrases, and edit for you. So please, as a writer, never edit yourself. That's my mantra for writers. But you can always edit others. Okay. So for assignments, don't worry. The admin is going to get back to you. So thank you everyone and thank you for the compliments. I'm glad you enjoyed this class, and I hope to see you next time. I look forward to joining you once again soon. Um, anyone and soon. So please, yeah, thank you so much. Every other question that has to do with this thing, please, the admin will take it up. So goodbye and have a wonderful evening. And I wish you a wonderful week ahead. Take care.
All right. Okay. All right. That was good. I hope you all enjoyed the class. So right now, I already dropped the video in the group. That's going to show you how to navigate through the app to get to the lessons for today's class and complete your assignment and quiz on the app. So I hope you have seen the video, and of course the lessons and the quiz and the assignments are already in the Link School app. So you can as well go to the app, you refer to the app, complete your assignment and quiz for today's class, and that would be all. Then see you next in the next class on Wednesday. All right. Have a good evening and bye bye.